Now, string interpolation with the double curly braces is one of the key features offered by Angular when it comes to outputting content in your template. Another crucial syntax or feature offered by Angular is the so-called property binding syntax. Because we of course also want to make sure that we show an image of the user. And for that we need to set the source attribute, for example. Now you could indeed do that by also using the double curly braces syntax between those quotes, because you can use it anywhere in your template, not just between tags as we're doing it here. So you could then access selectedUser.avatar. And if you would do that and save everything, you should see some output here. Actually not the image yet, because the path is not entirely correct yet, but you see that something changed. However, you would typically not use string interpolation for attributes like this. You typically only use it between tags as we're doing it here. Instead, in cases like this, if you want to configure an element through its attributes, you would typically use another core Angular feature called property binding, which looks like this. You don't have curly braces. Instead, you wrap the name of the property of the DOM element you want to configure, so of this image element in this case. You wrap the name of the property that should be set with square brackets. So opening and closing square brackets around the property name. And then inside of those quotes, you set the value that should be assigned to this property without curly braces. Now, selectedUser.avatar is actually not entirely correct because those images are stored in the assets folder and they are in the users folder. So the image name alone is not enough. And that's why we here actually want to construct a dynamic path and concatenate that with selectedUser.avatar. And then in that string created with single quotes here, since I'm using double quotes to wrap the overall value, we set up the rest of the path, which is assets/users/ and then the name of the user image file. And that is something you can do in Angular. You cannot just reference properties in places where you reference dynamic data, but you can also create dynamic values just in time, so to say. As I'm doing it here by constructing a string from a fixed string that's then combined with that value that's stored in the avatar property of the selected user. And we could have done something similar down here with string interpolation as well. You can also have other JavaScript expressions like 1+1 in there if you needed it. But in most cases, you will indeed refer to properties and any values stored inside of them, just as we're doing it here. Well, and with that, to finish this image, I also want to bind the alt property on the image tag, on the image element. And I'll bind this to selectedUser.name again. And then I'll press the code formatting shortcut that's built into Visual Studio Code so that the code gets formatted like this and is a bit easier to read. And with all that done, if you now save that, you should see that if you now reload, you also got an image here next to that name that changes with every reload. And that is how you can output dynamic data in your Angular apps. And string interpolation and property binding are two of the most important features you have to know when working with Angular, because in the end, Angular is all about building dynamic, interactive web applications, and that of course implies that you must be able to output dynamic data.